Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and today's episode is one that has been requested for years. Ever since people started discovering Wonderland Wednesday on my YouTube channel, the 1985 CBS Miniseries was one that was very frequently requested, and Sarah and I always planned to get to it, but somehow we never did. Until now. And we're not alone. Nicki from Trivial Theater is joining us. Nicki and I were talking earlier this year after recording a different podcast, and she was trying to remember a version of Alice in Wonderland that she had seen from her childhood. And from how she described it, I had a feeling it was this one, so I asked if she'd be interested in joining us when we did it. And between her, my, and Sarah's completely different reactions to this miniseries, it turned out to be the perfect set of episodes for her to join us on. So this episode will cover part 1 of the miniseries, which is Alice in Wonderland, and next week we'll cover part 2, which is Through the Looking Glass. So the main reason we chose to do this one was because you weren't sure if you'd seen it before. You said you remembered something from childhood. You remembered an Alice version from childhood, but you were never able to find it again. Was this the one you remembered?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Well, and I think I was looking under Looking Glass as compared to Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
And I didn't know if it was from the 70s or 80s. And it was one of those things that I casually looked for. I never did like an in-depth search. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Carol Channing, like her voice in my head and kind of that, like looking through the mirror at that setting, it was automatic. It's like, oh God, this is totally it. So it was kind of cool to see again.
I have a question, though. Were you expecting to see a good movie or a bad movie?
Well, okay, so for background, on my YouTube channel as well as in life, I'm a big fan of movies of a questionable nature.
Either way, you win with this one because you're going down a nostalgic lane, and it's terrible.
See, I find it has a certain level of charm in what it was at that time, because you've got like Steve Allen did the music for it. You have all these stars from that era that were big in that era. I mean, freaking Harvey Korman shows up in between like this and the Star Wars Holiday Special. I don't think you can get more campy than between the two of them.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard the term campy. Remind me what campy means.
It's like very like silly on purpose.
Okay. I think we're going to have different perspectives, so we'll both bring color to this interview.
Nothing wrong with that. I will also add, and this is a deep cut by any standards. I remember as a kid, I don't even know where my parents got it, but there was a show called Zoobilee Zoo, and it's kind of a, I don't know.
You're bringing back a very repressed memory.
Oh my God. So the way, and this is probably not going to help your outlook on this, but like the way that they did all the character, like all the animals.
100%.
Oh my God.
Now everything is coming back. I remember that show. This is exactly that.
I don't remember that show, and that's okay.
It was when I was really little, so you probably were a baby.
Yeah.
So Zoobilee Zoo was, I don't even know how you would describe it. It was like a town of people. Like they had a mayor and I think they had a police chief and several different animals. There was like a kangaroo and a lion and all that stuff. And I mean, it would have been just like, a normal little kid show. But all of the characters, like they had that kind of a fun fur like bodysuits. Mm-hmm. Then they had clothes and they had like the hooves or whatever the animal was. But just the headgear that they had was very specific to, like, if you were a mouse, it was a lot taller and it had the ears or, the bunny or whatever. But then you had like the full face of the person and it was like painted the way it in theory should be with like fur textures or whatever.
Naturally.
And like no beak. So they had like, they would just paint like your nose and mouth to sort of look like a beak as compared to having like a prosthetic.
I like how you... Yes, no prosthetics.
Well, and originally, just looking at the trivia for this, they had done, like they did the plaster masks that would be done for like a proper mask. If you were doing like prosthetics and things like that. But they were worried because there were all these big actors that were doing cameos. They actually started with that, but then the studio was like, no, we can't do that. We want to be able to see who these people are. Because,
not like Cary Grant.
I was just going to say that reminds me of what happened in the 33 version, which we'd also talked about doing, but we haven't yet. Sarah and I have watched it years ago. I reviewed it, but this is before I started doing things this way.
You'd love it.
Nice.
Yeah, that version was all like big name actors, but they had masks on, so you couldn't tell who was who.
Right, exactly. And some of the voices... Go ahead, sorry.
You know, if they were ever ashamed, then at least they were covered.
I mean, the one thing with this, I'll say, and I would imagine at least with a lot of the big names of that time, there's always that, I know that voice. You know, I know, this person is this, that person is that, if you have any understanding of the person. So...
Well, there is a ton of people in here. I was going to write a list of all the people and to talk about at the beginning, but there's so many people, I figured we'll just talk about each one as we get to them, because this is full. Well, first let's talk about Alice, Natalie Gregory. And I didn't think I knew her from anything, but it turned out I did. She was the voice of Jenny in Oliver and Company.
Really? Oh, that's so cool. I loved Oliver and Company.
Billy Joel didn't make it onto this one, though.
What?
So Billy Joel didn't make it onto this one, though?
Oh, no.
You probably would have been too, I don't even know. This is such a thing of its time.
I don't know that Billy Joel is silly enough to end up on something like this.
Oh, God. That is true. Like, the one thing you can say about this is it very much plays into that whimsical, very... like back then they did like the variety shows. It so plays into that.
Oh yeah.
You genuinely enjoyed this film, didn't you?
I did. I mean, so, okay. Here's the thing. I will admit that the music, it got to be, that there's that time and place for music, and I think that's one thing. Oh, God, sorry.
No, it's okay. But I think we can kind of talk about the songs as we go, because there were actually a couple that I was relatively okay with. Anyway.
And I would say that like the music for me, like I'm like, unless you're watching a specific dedicated musical, there's a time and place. And I think it's like you could expect that as every scene broke down, there was going to be at least one song in here. And I think that was something of the era, but honest to God, you could have taken out about half the songs and been great in my book.
Yeah. There was a lot.
You could have taken out most of the songs. And okay. Do we want to go scene by scene? How did we want to do this?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, because then you can praise and I can complain scene by scene.
Well, and I'll be like 50-50 either way, whether I'm praising or complaining.
It'll be balanced. Sweet and sour will be like good Chinese food.
Absolutely.
Well, aside from Alice, you have the mother and sister at the beginning. The mother is Sheila Allen, who I don't know if I knew her from anything. I looked her up. I'd heard of a lot she was in, but I didn't recognize her. So I don't know.
But she's not married to Steve Allen then? She's just...
No, she is actually. I think that's why she made... According to the trivia, that's why she was in it, I think.
Did anybody start watching this and feel like, wow, that sister is so grown? Like, Alice was like the child that they didn't expect to have. But then I find out that this is her actual sister in real life.
Well, she was born in 1964. I'm just looking here. She was born in 1964, and Natalie was born in 1975. So they were 11 years different.
Huh.
Okay. But I didn't realize at first when I started watching that she was 10, which makes sense that she would be a little bit older. She does seem younger than that to me, but that may be how they did her up, how she's acting, and the fact that I was tall when I was 10. So, I don't know.
And I think she's playing a 7-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And apparently she was like the youngest person to play Alice, which I question, because like the girl in the Czech version seemed younger than that.
Really
whoever said that on the page may have been like...
Maybe they meant American versions.
Sure, I could see that.
And as far as the sister, I'm not sure how much of an actress she was. She didn't have any really big roles. I don't think she did much other than this.
Did you start to get the feeling as you're watching this, is like, wow, this is so American?
Yes.
Very much.
And like, are we that rude? I mean, but of course, the British people are probably just as rude in the story, but they sound better doing it. So
I think you're right on that. Like, they're very, and I think of the era too, because when would Alice in Wonderland have been written? Roughly, was it 1800s?
Yes, during the reign of Queen Victoria. Was it 1860s maybe?
I want to say 1860s, but I'm not 100% sure, but it was around there.
And you're talking possibly rude versus blunt, you know?
Oh, that's true.
Because a lot of British people...
both.
Exactly. Because, I mean, if you go especially like because I worked over in England for a bit at a very traditional British B&B, and
Cool.
even the guy that owned that was incredibly like he didn't sugarcoat anything. He was very much if you forgot like silverware on the table, like if someone was having a fish dish and you didn't remove the meat knife and fork, he would take you out there by the collar and apologize to the people and say to you, don't forget the silverware. Like it was that kind of thing. So I do think that was that level of bluntness of the era, especially towards someone younger.
Alrighty then.
Possibly. I really am not 100% sure, but I do think that to some extent plays in.
Sure, they're the authority figures.
But then she was quite, you're right though, she was definitely she could dish it out and take it.
Yeah, kind of like my family. How did you all feel about her acting? Because I thought, okay, is this like a theater thing going on here? I was looking for some history because she seemed like somebody who had training in dancing, and I thought, well, maybe there's theater going on here, and I didn't care for her acting as much.
I thought it was kind of hit or miss, and I thought she overacted a little bit, and I kind of put it off on the direction rather than the acting, because she did a lot of things that you wouldn't think that a normal kid would do, and she said a lot of things that I don't think a normal kid would say. I think she narrated a little too much, and I put that off on the script and the direction more than I put it off on her. I think she was doing what she was told.
True. I looked at this, like I agree with Sarah. I think it definitely had a feeling of more theater than it did of a miniseries to me, like what you would traditionally associate with that. And it did feel, I'm torn on this because like with a lot of the movies I watch, and I don't think this is low budget per se, but there's definitely that era of it's still a kid actor on a TV thing. It's not like you're talking a multi-million-dollar movie kind of a deal. Mm-hmm. For what she had to say and how she had to say it, I think that it was well done for what she was trying to do, but it definitely had more of a one-note quality to it. I don't know. But yet when you're talking kid actors, there's that level of, you've got Drew Barrymore in doing the things that she did as a kid, and then you've got like this, and then you have like, I don't know, some kid that can't keep looking at the camera or whatever. It's, I don't know.
Kind of between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I appreciated what she did because I couldn't do it at that age.
Sure. We haven't even like gotten off the bank yet.
Well, and I think once you get the ball rolling, you get past the preliminary stuff and get into the actual thing.
Good luck.
Right. No, I understand. It's an odd mix of a miniseries. Like I remember watching it as a kid and being enthralled by those parts of it. But the only parts I remembered were the things that really stood out, like the fact that she crawled through a mirror and Carol Channing, and just because her voice is so unique. The rest of it, I didn't remember from one side to the other. So, yeah.
Well, the one thing that this series did that a lot of Alice versions do is they give Alice some sort of an outside motivation. Like they try and beef up her story in the real world instead of just going straight into nonsense. And with this one, she's obsessed with growing up, and tea time is the mark of growing up for some reason.
Which I have issues with. Like, I can see why they would layer over an extra plot line, but my brain is like, you're a child, enjoy it. Let's not make too big a deal out of this. Did anybody recognize the actor Red Buttons?
I know of him. Like he was in Poseidon Adventure. I think he was a comedian. I know I've seen him on things, but I always get him and Red Skelton mixed up. So I know him, but not well.
Okay.
I didn't recognize him, but I looked him up and it said that he played the doctor's assistant in Pete's Dragon. And I haven't seen Pete's Dragon in years, like the original one, but I vaguely remember him from that. So that's the only place I would have known him from.
So taking off after the rabbit, you go down the lightning nightmare hole.
Yeah, that was
which every
different.
child is like, yes, let me chase the giant anthropomorphic rabbit down the lightning hole.
Hey, as a kid, it's exciting.
Yeah, okay, if that was your childhood. I did dangerous things too, just not that one. No, that was, I guess they were trying to add some excitement there, instead of having her look at a jar of marmalade while drifting slowly down into the center of the earth. And I didn't know what they were going to do with the series of doors. I thought they were basically just going to have all these doors layered in to get down to the tiny one and it'll be the garden, but they actually did have the Hall of Doors. And then it shuts behind her like there's a demon beast or something when she gets into the Hall of Doors. So, yeah, not a good moment to be a small girl in an underground cavern.
Well, you know how all those old, and this is, I know that there wasn't a commercial break there, but you're trying to build the suspension to get people into the story. Like, and then before every break or every, setup commercial break, they'd have that kind of like stinger music and kind of leave it on a cliffhanger.
Right.
That's a lot of commercial breaks, but or a lot of clips to leave people on when you go to commercial break, but that's kind of what I got from that. Was it was supposed to be like, it got you into the story, but it needs to draw you further. That way you're like, oh, I can't leave now. Even, they're getting into the Room of Doors. What's going to happen? Ah!
I suppose if you are watching it for the first time instead of the 500th like me,
Understandable. But even, if you think about your average 30-something mom that, watched Alice in Wonderland as a kid, the Disney version, and maybe caught a version between here and there, but like your memory going back to that is going to be, oh, I remember Alice in Wonderland. Oh, what's going to happen? Oh, I don't remember this part. Or, oh, look at this. Or,
because it wasn't in the book.
Exactly.
No, and like for an American mom at the time, probably only seen the Disney version. I think for most Americans, unless they're in this niche that seems to exist, they've probably only seen the Disney version as a kid.
I mean, I can speak for myself that I have seen 2 or 3 versions in addition to the ones that Jonathan and I have reviewed, but
you're also you have a movie channel and you're reviewing with Jonathan, so I doubt that you're like everybody.
Well, true.
You know stuff.
But then to that point, I was watching even this version, which is the most comprehensive one that I've seen in I don't even know how many years, but like I'm watching it going, okay, I know that some of these pieces are definitely not part of the book, but I couldn't identify outside of the big ones, what was exaggerated for this miniseries versus what was not included and what not, or what shouldn't have been included.
Well, and sometimes we have to reference the book because it's been years since I read through the whole thing. I have read all of it, but there are all these little details that you can be like, wait, how did the train scene go? So, yeah. Like
the Humpty Dumpty thing, I'm sitting there going, Humpty Dumpty, really?
Yeah, I know, that's a thing. And yeah, they didn't do it accurately, but yeah, we can get into that when we get
That's part 2.
Yes. Well, and then, okay, so she's in the Hall of Doors, and she's acting like the little door may be the way home, which I guess that's logical, sort of, as logical as the story is, for a child to think that, but it's really not accurate to the book. She just wanted to get into the beautiful garden,
Mm-hmm.
They did sort of an interesting bottle design for the drink me instead of having a tag to have it sort of embossed metal.
It's very fancy. And the cake, too, was very fancy. I remember thinking that I wanted that box when I was a kid. Like, I thought that would have been so cool.
If you get on the internet, there are probably like 10 versions and you can decide which one that you want and then put tiny cakes in it and pretend to be fancy.
But will I get bigger and smaller based on them?
It depends on how many cakes you eat.
Point taken. I take one bite out a day, but it doesn't, mold. That would be cool, but unfortunately,
just get the something from the Hostess company, and you'll be fine.
Oh man!
They also did this a little bit differently, where instead of having her swimming in the hall,
She like falls out a crack in the wall.
I put it as like canal of tears.
I wrote it's a brook at best. And she says, "Oh, now I've fallen into the sea." And I'm like, that is not a sea.
Well, and that's the thing too. And it's, again, it turns into that thing of like the budget of something like that. In the book, you can, and even with like, you look at Harry Potter and things like that, the size of like Hagrid, for instance, is, supposed to be massive and he's supposed to be imposing. But when you're trying to work with that on a, live action scale, you kind of have to work with what you've got available. And trying to do like a gigantic Sea of Tears, I don't know, I feel like they could have done more with that. But like, even when she's crying and flooding the space, it doesn't really, like, she's too small to really flood it properly.
That's how it goes in a lot of versions.
I can imagine.
I felt like they did a fairly good job with the whole crying on the floor thing. They just copped out of the swimming her way out into the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have written down Rowdy Pigeon before Canal of Tears. Like, whoever that woman was who played the pigeon, like, she really put herself, like, she could.
I think that was supposed to be the dodo.
Oh yeah, that was Shelley Winter.
Well, she put herself into it, man.
Well, according to the trivia, she said basically she demanded that they give her a line instead of bird choking sounds. I'm an Oscar winner. You give me words to speak. Remember the Poseidon? You're trying to drown me.
Did she say that on the?
No.
She
Okay.
said that as far as like the behind the scenes of this.
Yeah, she was not okay.
So it sounds like they weren't going to give her any lines. They just wanted a star in that role for no reason.
Well, and that's this whole movie. Look at like all of these big stars that were in it for cameos.
Oh yeah, this scene in particular.
I don't know how much I feel sorry for her, because she's like, I want attention. I deserve attention. The one that I felt sorry for was Donald O'Connor. It's like, this is, how far have you fallen? That you're this poor man playing, like, okay, I have Rowdy Pigeon, Canal of Tears / Mouse with Yellow Teeth, and then right beneath that is my first help.
Which implies you wrote help multiple times.
I think I might have help more than once in my notes here. But no, Donald O'Connor, just like, he's this good-looking young guy with all of these amazing dancing abilities. So it was fitting that he danced with Alice a little bit. But it's like, he was on another Alice version. Maybe you remember this, Jonathan, the American.
I had forgotten, but when I looked him up, I was like, oh yeah, he was the Mock Turtle in that PBS version.
That might have given him a little more dignity than this one. But it's like, you deserve more, Donald. You deserve more than to be painted and feathered and trotted out in your old age. I love you, Donald.
It was interesting with the birds at the open, just like, and I was looking when they did the lineup, and I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of people of note that are these birds. And then all of a sudden, yeah, they just float by, and you're just like,
and you never see them again.
No, they don't come back up at all. Not even for like the curtain call at the end. It's just
right.
Even if it was a faraway shot, you're missing half your cast. I mean, the only one of the first, half an hour or whatever that, got treated decently was Sammy Davis Jr.
And how much money did the poor birds make? Go out
Bird
with
seed.
burgers afterward and go cry. Remember the glory days.
Except for Shelley Winters, who decided to give a good squawk or two.
Yeah, because she deserved it.
That's right. Dang it.
She's Shelley Winters, man.
Exactly.
This scene, I felt like you start to get the feeling like, okay, this is supposed to appeal to children. I think probably with the music, trying to engage children that way, it doesn't feel so much like, sometimes Alice, it's almost more for grown-ups. Like, especially at this point, if you're going to get the historical references and stuff. But this one with the song and dance and whatever, I think it did fit more into the children category.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can say watching it as a kid, it definitely, like, I remember it fondly, and I certainly like went looking for it afterwards, but it was those few specific things that kind of stuck with me. So I can't say the music really stuck with me. I can't say the dancing did. It was more those those specific elements. And I don't know, maybe as a weird kid, I can actually guarantee I was a weird kid.
Sure. I mean, we all have our. I mean, it's understandable if Carol Channing got stuck in your head. Okay?
Oh my God.
I'm sitting here thinking, marry them all, watching Thumbelina. Yeah.
I haven't seen Thumbelina in years. I forgot that she was in that.
I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but kind of fun and sweet at the same time. And that song about coming home, that's really cozy. Anyway.
Rather watch that than this, right?
It's shorter, that's for sure. And the thing is, I don't have any childhood memories attached to that. That's another thing that maybe would have made a difference for me. Whereas, yeah, Thumbelina, I grew up watching that.
Oh, yeah. No, and that certainly does make a difference. And, I mean, like I say, I haven't heard anybody talk about the 80s like this. I don't think I've ever run across anyone, and regretted I haven't brought it up in conversation randomly, like, hey, remember that?
This is one I get requested, like, a lot.
Really?
This is one of the most requested ones since I started reviewing Alice in Wonderland versions.
Apparently the hardcore Alice people are after this one. And watching, yeah, apparently. And watching, well, and if they're in our age bracket, then they're probably a lot of people with childhood memories connected to this one. And I feel like as much as I intend to complain, it really does belong in our canon of episodes. Like, just the style, the length, everything, it fits in with this whole series.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely one that you need to watch if you're planning to watch all the Alices.
Definitely. And just the star power of this, I could see being a real draw for folks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Harvey Korman alone, not that Harvey Korman equals quality as we've seen with other things. But it just that, like, that era of TV does have that warm fuzzy for a lot of people, I mean, like you talk about Donald, O'Connor. Donald O'Connor. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, just that 60s, 70s era of variety and television people.
Like with Donald O'Connor, that's my childhood, because I grew up watching, like Singing in the Rain.
That's awesome, though. So, he was great.
Yes, he was.
he kicked so much butt. Like, total, just, yeah.
I should watch more Donald O'Connor, and then I'll be like, wow, this movie is so shallow, but it was fun.
Well, and it's because they had so many cameos. You get that great amuse-bouche of, like, oh, I can have a little bit of this, or I guess a buffet of that era. You get a little bit of this actor and a little bit of that actor. But in that same vein, you don't really get any depth on them, because you're given such a small portion of each one, outside of, like, the red and the white queens. Everyone else just kind of comes in and out.
It's one of those things, if you're already familiar with their personality, which I was familiar with a fair amount of these people, then you see, okay, they're playing into, well, okay, I'm thinking like Sammy Davis, which that's skipping ahead.
No.
The next bit would be the Rabbit House, where she's Marianne. And I felt like they did a fairly good job tying all of that together. Like, they took a little bit of liberty with the whole fan and glove scenario, but they did a pretty good job with the segues there. And I liked the house. I liked the furnishings. And they included Pat and Bill. They made that a little bit different, but this film was an odd admixture of a lot of accuracy to the book with tons of liberties thrown in. It was kind of a weird sandwich of hot and cold. I don't know. And this is a small detail that I don't know. Okay, for any hardcore nerd, I just noticed that they had a thatch roof instead of a tile roof. You have Bill, who a tile falls to the ground during the scene. It's not important, not a big deal. It's just something I noticed.
Nothing wrong with noticing the small details.
With this series, when you watched as many as we've watched, you might as well pick up on small details, because otherwise...
Absolutely. You have to. It's the same, like, if you've got all your major pillars of plot, it is those small details that separate one from another. And
whether this was enjoyable, whether it was accurate, whether you would come back to it or not.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why people come back to your series, is they're looking for those differences. And if it's worth looking at.
The people who watch this series must be like people who collect monocles or I don't know. It's so specific. It's such a specific love, and it's an understandable love too. But it's interesting that there is that community out there that love the story that much.
Would you say that given, and obviously, like you look at like Phantom of the Opera, this, other stories kind of in that realm, like those really classic stories. Do you think Alice is probably one of the ones that is the most redone, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, by far.
Absolutely. Like we started a series, okay, Peter and the Wolf. Yeah, there's variation, but not the extreme variation of Alice. Mm-hmm. And like The Secret Garden, an absolutely beautiful and worthy story, you're not going to have the same amount of variation. I think maybe part of it is that this is so whimsical. Like it just begs for theater, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say.
And it's the perfect thing to do a version like this where there's a ton of stars, each having their own little cameo, because there's so many weird characters in these stories.
So many little things that can be, yeah. So, yeah, it kind of lends itself more than some other stories.
Good to know. Cool.
I don't know how much. Yeah, I guess
I'm just curious. Yeah.
I guess we've talked about that between ourselves a little bit, but no, that's a good point to bring up. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about this scene, or?
Well, my main takeaway from this scene was that Bill the Lizard looked like a Doctor Who villain from the 80s.
He did, very much did. And I also loved the gigantic invite that the frog had.
That's not that scene yet.
Okay.
That's the Duchess's house.
Oh, sorry, wrong.
No, it's okay. The next one is Sammy Davis. We can finally talk about Sammy Davis more fully. I have like smoker's lung. He must have been coughing at the beginning of this scene. Don't let me just take over this because I have thoughts.
You're okay. Have at it.
What about you, Jonathan?
I liked this scene. This is one of my favorite scenes.
I put, Sammy Davis, the most kindly caterpillar. Like, normally the caterpillar is this true. Really grumpy, he's like the uncle or something hanging out in the library. Who are you? And Sammy Davis is more like, oh, come here, child. Take a candy. Let's dance together. It's, oh, you're struggling. He had the most compassionate look on his face. They didn't have proper resolution to okay. I have never seen the caterpillar explode in a puff of smoke and then come out dancing. Okay?
That is true. I wrote in my notes, the caterpillar explodes. And I wrote explodes in giant letters. It's like, that was shocked. Like, this is way different than I've ever seen.
This is where they were totally playing into who Sammy Davis was, not what the scene was.
Yeah.
True.
And it was one of the most different takes that I've ever seen, if not the most different take on the "You Are Old, Father William."
Yeah, but I really liked that about it. I liked that they turned it into a dance number where the caterpillar is Father William and Alice is his son.
I don't think I'm going to lodge massive complaints about this scene. They took creative liberty. He actually was nice in the character. One of the things, tiny complaint, and it probably doesn't matter that much. They didn't have the whole resolution to the scene of, one side makes you grow bigger, one side makes you grow smaller, the mushroom, and they just chose to leave that out. It's really iconic in my mind. That's usually in there, but it still worked without it. Mm-hmm. So if you just love Sammy Davis, and it was an interesting take on the scene.
I enjoyed the weird take. The explosions were, I guess, they fit for the era. They fit kind of that feel, and it's definitely of the characters or of the performances that we get. I think his is, like you say, the most him. So I don't know if it was a case of like he was being paid the most, or in theory he was like the biggest star on this. But he definitely let it off with like it was equal parts him and what he did over story-wise. So definitely there was a physicality to it that I don't think a lot of the other celebrity cameos had.
That's true.
It certainly wasn't, Shelley Winter, floating down the river.
And then we can we move on to, unless you have something more to add, we move on to your fish messenger.
From a distance, was it a frog or a fish?
Both.
Yeah, the frog is the servant of the Duchess. The fish is the one delivering the message.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because it was the frog that was outside, stood outside when Alice and him had the whole back and forth.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Exactly. I mean, that's such an obvious detail, Nick. just kidding. No, that comes from watching all these versions and reading the book that you would be like, yes, no, it's the fish that delivers the message.
I mean, a frog is an obvious choice for someone to stand there by the front gate and, hold a giant version. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, I do have one real quick piece here. I'm just looking back to the trivia. So, and this jumps ahead a bit, but bear with me because it does come back to now. So when Alice grows in the court scene, she says, I didn't eat any cake or mushroom. There was a deleted scene where Alice ate the caterpillar's mushroom, which caused her to grow and shrink. So it was a deleted scene from the thing.
Okay, so they obviously decided, well, we want to fit this other thing in instead of this.
Exactly. Or they went along and maybe it didn't turn out properly or whatever. But that's
okay. Well,
so they did
that would
actually
be more of
shoot
an
it.
excuse. That would be more of an excuse than not including it.
Right.
Well, that was a thank you for mentioning that. That's
absolutely. I'm happy to be of assistance.
Now, who played the Duchess? I know it was a famous. She seemed familiar to me.
Martha Ray, and it was her final movie. Let's see. She was Jumbo, Waikiki Wedding.
I looked her up, but I didn't recognize anything she'd been in.
She was in The Love Boat. I mean, she was in Love American Style.
Did she act in the 30s? Was she ever in a movie with
in
Bob
the 30s?
Hope? Am I making
She was
that up?
Big Broadcast of 37, Hideaway Girl, College Holiday.
I wonder if I watched one of those.
Double or Nothing.
I would have to look her up, but I'm just envisioning somebody, but in a younger state, and it's not super important, but there was a lady back in the day who was...
She's beautiful.
Okay.
I don't know if I can share screens here. Let's see.
Was she on Singing in the Rain? That would be a question. Okay. Then she's not the person that I'm thinking of, because there was a lady who was a voice coach on Singing in the Rain and was really hammy. I've probably seen her in something, but... Oh, I wonder if I saw her in College Swing. I wonder.
George Burns, Gracie Allen.
Yeah, I wonder if I watched. I don't know if I watched the whole thing, but I feel like I saw her in that. Yep, Bob Hope. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, Martha Ray. There you go. Yeah. Okay, that's what I saw her in. I don't know if I watched the whole. Actually, I probably watched the whole Shallow thing, and it was entertaining.
Nice. Nothing wrong with that. No, she was great in it. I loved the Duchess character. I thought she was fun.
You would probably enjoy College Swing.
Nice. I kept going back to the fact that she reminded me of Carol Burnett. Like just the way that she enunciated and the way that she kind of handed up. They should have had
Carol Burnett in this.
Oh, she would have elevated.
Absolutely.
Now, this is not true. This is me trivia. Okay. Did anybody else look at the blanket that the Duchess had the baby and think, that reminds me of a blanket that we had when I was little?
That's pretty cool, though.
Blue pastel colors.
Aww.
And that baby was probably the most pitiful baby that I've ever heard in the scene. Like, she plops it in the bed and, like, it lets out this little pitiful noise. And normally you're not made to feel that sorry for the baby, but this one seemed more normal and like,
it wasn't a hideous monstrosity of a puppet.
That is true.
It made one or more noises that were just like, oh, that poor baby. Yeah.
I mean, for a human pig hybrid, I felt bad for her, the baby. Yeah, exactly it.
I don't know. This might be the first positive comment that I had. I said I like Hate Song. Best part of movie? ?
It was a very fun song. There's no doubt.
There were two songs. There were two songs out of this whole thing that I backed up like, I want to listen to that some more. And it was the Hate Song and the other vindictive song later on. Like, for some reason, these were the ones resonating with me.
Well, considering how you ended up feeling about the overall miniseries, I think that's not a bad thing. You know, it kind of backs up how you're feeling.
No, I don't think that's it.
But vindictive songs are more fun.
I think it's just the whole release of somebody being unpleasant and pessimistic. Not that you want to stay in that place, but it's like making light of negative feelings. Like, there's a song by Noel Coward called "There Are Bad Times Just Around the Corner," and he takes these old songs that were meant to, the song "There'll Be Bluebirds Over the White Cliffs." He says there are blackbirds over the grayish cliffs of Dover, and all of these different things. Like, and there's no good whining about a silver lining because we know from experience that they won't roll by. And but he's singing it in this really dry British matter-of-fact way, and it's so funny and so entertaining. And so these songs where they're like, "Oh, I know how to make my subjects hide under their beds, and there's like no point in being optimistic and pleasant and everything." For some reason, it was kind of cathartic or something.
So how did you feel about the "I Hate Dogs and Cats" song done by
Sherman Hemsley, the mouse?
I did not like that. I did not like that. Probably,
understandable.
I'll probably think of how to explain it after the fact. But no,
nothing wrong with that.
And I have "Why Bald Cat?"
Because Teddy Savalas, I think probably because Teddy Savalas is known for being bald.
And see, they're playing into something that's known to other people, but if you're watching it without knowing this character, you're like, why would you do that? That is weird.
He was an odd choice too. Like, of all the people, again, and I could probably say this for a lot of roles, and I know that it's a generally speaking male character, but I could see like Tim Conway or Carol Burnett absolutely killing it as the Cheshire Cat. Like, just that smile, it just didn't. I'm sorry, it's like he was like not a hard-bitten detective guy, but like he played very serious roles. And I just, of all the characters, the Cheshire, and maybe it's because of time, but the Cheshire Cat is such an iconic, for the smile and the head and all that stuff. There was nothing about this that made me think Cheshire Cat. I looked at it and went, eh?
Okay, so you actually have a complaint. Yay!
I have given, like, generally speaking, yeah. I mean, there's. I'm not going to say that this was a knockdown, drag out, perfect adaptation by any stretch. It's still an '80s thing. Like, truthfully, when we got to the Duchess part of it, I wrote down that it feels like it feels like something like Tales from the Crypt, because I was trying to figure out how it felt to me, because it reminded me of things I'd seen previous. Go ahead.
This is hilarious, because the Duchess part, to me, that was one of the better parts.
Oh no, I just mean, like, to that point, I was trying to think of it, and just the way that it kind of presented itself, it gave me, like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I love Tales from the Dark Side. It's cute but slightly sinister.
The Duchess part is supposed to be dark. Really, like, how do you get around that? We've seen worse than this, though.
There's one line here that reminded me of the really bad one. They changed it for this version because there's a line in the book, "Speaking of axes, off with her head." And they had that line in here, but they said, "Speaking of axes, chop off her nose." And I was like, are they trying to kid-friendly that? Because that's
no way to kid-friendly that.
Much more kid-friendly.
And my mind is flashing back to the 30s one.
Yeah, where she's coming after her with an axe.
She's crazed, and she has an axe. So you need to watch the 30s one, Nicki.
Check it out.
Yeah, that one would be one for you, yes.
I will say, though, okay, I was not familiar with the actor who played the Cheshire Cat. And this is another thing. Like, he had such a kind face. Like, the Cheshire Cat is kind of a little bit crazy. Sinister? Crazy. No, I don't view the Cheshire Cat as sinister. They can make it sinister. They can leave a plush head on the branch. But this one, he had such a kind face. And then there was that weird song about being stuck there and not having hope. And I'm like, it rhymed, but this was not good. So my biggest praise is that I just liked his face. He had a good face.
He did have a good face, just not for the cat, though, in my opinion.
And that's fine. Yeah. Your suggestions would have been better.
And I'm sure that was probably a case of, again, who was big and who was available at the time, because that's really what they seemed like they were going for. Like, and not even like we've got such and so on the phone. What can we put them in? Oh, let's just make them join Shelley Winter in the salty brook of tears.
Well, okay, and the whole meow baby thing, was that supposed to be playing into his personality?
I think so.
Like, is he like an Italian American or something?
I think. Let me look it up quick. I don't honestly remember. I know that he's not Italian or French or whatever, but yeah, I think he's Telly Savalas. He was born in New York. Oh, Greek, which would still play into that whole like kind of suave. Hey, how you doing? I will also add that the cook's aim. Oh my god, that was amazing.
What did I miss?
She managed to hit like the same space or same place on the curio thing like multiple times.
Maybe she was a softball player in high school.
Very possibly.
Reliving the old days. So yeah, you have the cat not giving reasonable hope, and yeah, the plotline was just kind of weird there. But then we move on like we're supposed to the tea party. Now we get to share our thoughts.
Well, we could first talk about the people in the scene, because I was surprised at who the Mad Hatter was. I didn't recognize him, but I looked him up, and he's the guy who wrote like all the songs for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Wow.
Oh yeah, he had
and his teeth were not like that in real life.
He was also Captain Manzini in the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
We all have a unique perspective, because I said the Hatter reminds me of Bijan Kamkar. But Bijan Kamkar is cooler.
Well, and one thing I noticed at this point, and I don't think I'm right on this particular on the Hatter himself, because when he played in Garbage Pail Kids, he's got these gigantic eyebrows. But the one thing I noticed throughout this movie, like after I saw his eyebrows there are so many crazy eyebrows in this movie.
Oh, I don't know how much I paid attention.
Like the Griffin had like feathers, like specifically placed across his eyebrows. There was other like I think the mock. No,
I feel like I appreciated the feather thing.
No, understandable, 100%. Yeah. There was a lot of them though that had like really extreme eyebrows, and I'm going, wow, those are some fancy eyebrows. I mean,
well, and then like looping back to the Hatter, I was not paying enough attention to the eyebrows. I think I was too distracted by the teeth, and I actually paused the video and went and listened to a Bijan song, which is like he's okay. Do you know who Bijan is?
I've heard the name. I'm not familiar.
Bless you. I didn't think anybody
Please tell
would know
me more.
Okay, so he's like this super famous Middle Eastern folk musician, if you're into Middle Eastern folk. But I think he was in, like, he's of the same era as Bob Dylan. And,
oh, cool.
He's a really cool figure. And I don't know if he would appreciate, he'll never listen to this, Lord willing. He probably would not appreciate me comparing to the Mad Hatter, but then when I looked up the actor, like, you can tell this guy singing, he actually has singing ability too. Mm-hmm. Like the guy who plays the Hatter, and he seemed like a pretty famous, like he got around.
Mm-hmm. Very much. Like he had a decent repertoire of like under composer. Yeah, he had a fair number, if I remember correctly, on IMDb.
Yeah, he had. I think his composer section was longer than his actor section.
Interesting.
And I didn't really recognize him in the actor section, but then when I saw composer, I opened that, and that's when I saw he did all the songs for Willy Wonka, and I was like, oh, okay, well that's why he's famous.
Which that's such a good soundtrack. It really is.
Yeah, soundtrack was 268 credits. Composer is 5.
Like I love the song About Imagination on there.
Oh, definitely. Actor was 78. So he's done a fair amount of acting, but yeah, definitely more so on the soundtrack front.
Yeah, the soundtrack is what jumped out at me.
Did anybody recognize the Dormouse? Is he famous?
Roddy McDowell. Oh yeah.
Artie Johnson is Dormouse. Roddy McDowell's March Hare.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Artie Johnson.
I definitely recognized March Hare.
Yes,
apologies.
Artie Johnson, I didn't recognize him. He was a prolific actor because I looked him up, but nothing jumped out at me.
Did he do a lot of bit parts?
I think so.
Okay.
He did a lot of voice acting.
He's one of those where if I saw him without the makeup, I might recognize him from other things. Oh, the March Hare probably had teeth I didn't like either. I'm trying to remember, like, what did they sing about in this scene? It shows you how memorable it was. I don't really even remember. Like, there was a song I remember.
The main thing that I remember about the scene was that Roddy McDowell was the March Hare, because Roddy McDowell was the only person that I knew already.
Right.
And I know him because he was in That Darn Cat. And he's in a lot of other things, but that's the main thing that I know him from.
I put DC down. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the boyfriend of her sister.
He also,
her really awful boyfriend.
If you ever saw Batman the Animated Series, he was the voice of the Mad Hatter there too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Another Alice in Wonderland connection.
Very much so. And then he was in Planet of the Apes. What else? He's been in it. Like, he's one of those actors that's just like, not like, kind of guy, but still.
He's still all over the place.
So That Darn Cat was probably his best role ever.
Absolutely. I mean, is there any doubt?
I want my duck.
So in the grand scheme of tea parties that you've seen, where does this one rank?
It's not the worst, but it's not the best.
Yeah. It's kind of in the middle.
They inserted silly lines in there that totally did not belong, and it was cheesy. And
I wrote down that they added a ton of dialogue and wordplay, but it was written in such a way that it felt like it could be part of the story, even though it was not.
That's what I was kind of wondering about, honestly.
It was. Yeah, I'd rather have wordplay from the book, unless it's really, really clever or something, which I don't know how much they delved into that, but no. At least the guy singing the song that was not memorable, that didn't need to be there, could actually sing. I think we've had it where they purposefully sang badly, or maybe sang badly, but not on purpose. I mean, we've probably run the gamut here. So, yeah. And it's not one of those. I mean, I probably did want the scene to be over, but I've probably also seen it where you really want the scene to end and it doesn't want to end. So yeah, kind of in the middle to bad.
Yeah, it took a while, but it wasn't horrible.
Yeah, I could see, because it is so iconic, especially from a modern standard, I could definitely see it like going, well, it's either going to be awesome or it's going to be terrible. And with expectations of, and you've seen, there have been so many variations on this. What else can you do with a tea scene, even with as eclectic as it is?
They decided to do it.
They went all the way
in their little 80s musical way.
And that was interesting. Like, and not to say you knew that it was dubbed over. I mean, that goes without saying, because that's kind of what they did. But there were some that were so much more clearly dubbed over than ones that weren't.
I was not thinking about that at all.
And I didn't really.
They should have just handed him a little golden microphone and had him get up on the table and sing or something.
That would have been amazing. He just grabs Dormouse's tail and starts like singing into it.
Oh, I don't know. My next line is, "I hate tights."
Oh my, yeah. Is that on the Mock Turtle?
No, we're on to the painting the roses and the scene.
That way.
Well, in between that, there was another scene that I wanted to talk about, because there's a scene that either they inserted, like they made it up, or they took it from Through the Looking Glass and then completely changed it. Because after the tea party, she finds a fawn.
Oh, yes. Which was sweet and maybe a little too much spit involved. But no, she's supposed to be in sort of a magical wood in Through the Looking Glass, where the fawn it's almost like just the nature of the wood where the fawn is not scared of her and she's having trouble with her memory, I think. And then once they get out of the wood, the fawn is scared and runs away. But it makes for a very sweet picture in the book with like her arm around the fawn.
Mm-hmm.
And they just felt like putting a cute animal in here, I guess, because this is not where that belongs.
Yeah, and the scene was completely different. They didn't talk to each other at all. It was just an actual fawn. Very cute fawn.
She talked to the fawn.
Yeah, she talked to it, but it
wasn't
didn't
like
talk back.
Talking animal. Which I think maybe there was some back and forth dialogue in the...
I think so.
According to the trivia, and this is, according to this at least, the scene with the fawn and the musical number were written to be included in part 2 after her encounter with the net, but it was shifted to part 1 in editing.
Okay, so it was the fawn scene from Looking Glass then.
Wow, they were attempting to be accurate and they muffed it.
Yep. What about the monkey? Like that was...
that was not
I will get to that. I will get to that. But
not to jump ahead. And the tight thing I bring up because although I saw it with the cards, like it was just like out. Everything was out with the mock turtle. But anyway, continue.
And like looping back to the fawn, I doubt that I appreciated the song at the time, but this is such a common thing to mix in stuff from Through the Looking Glass into Alice that I don't have as big of a complaint about that. And it was a cute baby animal, so...
Yeah.
And they actually went to the trouble to include it, so...
Yeah, like I've only seen the fawn in one other version.
And was that one that you didn't
creepy
like?
Puppet.
Yeah, this was an actual cute fawn. Speaking of creepy, the queen... Man, she's like... She wasn't creepy the whole time, but there were one or more smiles that she gave to Alice that were like, you were evil. You're like the person at the party that you don't want to be friends with. But no, I have a hatred of men in tights. It's like the medieval period is over. Just put on some pants.
Well, the 80s definitely had its own thing when it came to tights. Holy crap.
Well, and then like this story really lends itself to tights. It really does. With it, like the card characters, like it's
That's usually who's wearing tights in all the versions.
They got a
I've
little
seen.
tight happy in
they did
this production, but yeah. No, so I hated that, but the song, like I said, this song kind of resonated with me. She was being very unpleasant.
I did enjoy the costumes. I think they did a really cool job with that, which I know it's very kind of medieval costuming, but there was a lot of like subtle like card, like the jack or the club and the spade and the heart and the diamonds that were kind of incorporated in kind of a neat way.
Yeah, the costumes were pretty good in this scene. They weren't amazing for the entire production, but they were good in this scene.
Yeah, like I could have done without the fun fur that everybody had as animals. But I will appreciate they did a great job with the medieval costuming. And I know that you expect it to like all sort of work together, but there wasn't like that random person at the back wearing like, a modern interpretation of an old school thing. It all kind of kept with the same period.
I felt like they got a pretty good character they did a pretty good job with the character of the king too.
Did you recognize the king?
No,
because the king was he played a character in The Great Muppet Caper. He's the guy on the bench by the lake.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Nice. But I feel like they managed to make him a little bit... Didn't they make him a little bit funny for this version?
This is one of the better kings. Robert Morley is the actor's name. I don't really know who that is, but I recognized him for The Great Muppet Caper.
Looks like he's in quite a few British-based things.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't really recognize the Queen either. That was Jane Meadows.
She seems kind of familiar.
I looked her up, but I didn't recognize any of her roles. But she's had a long career, so...
I probably saw her in a random old movie or something, so...
She was Mitch's mom in City Slickers. I don't know who Mitch is.
I recognize the name City Slickers. Like, this is with a lot of these people. I recognized a lot of the titles that they were in, but I haven't seen them, so I don't count that as recognizing them, because even though I recognize what they were in, I don't really know what they did, so...
And they They actually had live flamingos for this, didn't they? And
At least they didn't try to use them or grab them roughly like they did in that one other version.
You're kidding. What?
I think that was the 33.
Well, that
was it 31 or 33? It was one of the 30s ones.
That doesn't surprise me.
That had faded out of my mind, but no. In the 30s, they weren't necessarily going to be nice to the people, let alone...
Oof.
The 30s was the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they changed it up. They didn't have hedgehogs. They had, like, guinea pigs.
Yeah.
For the croquet balls.
Which was interesting. But
the guinea pig was so cute.
Yeah, and it wasn't such a huge change that I was like, why didn't they have the hedgehogs? I thought the guinea pigs were fine.
They probably showed up better on camera.
Probably.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting is that they had another queen. They had the Queen of Diamonds there, which you don't generally have other queens.
Sure. She was the nice one, right?
Yes.
I'll allow it.
And then the Cheshire Cat comes back, of course, but I thought it was weird that she acted like he was a friend, even though in the earlier scene, I think she called him a mean cat, and they didn't leave on the best of terms.
Maybe a nod to the complicated relationship we can have with cats.
That is true. You know, but if you go to feed them their favorite food or their favorite treats, they'll definitely come back.
Yeah, and then did anybody have anything more to say about this scene?
Just that when they called the Duchess in, they didn't have much of anything with her. Her scene was so short, you didn't get all the fun dialogue about morals, and
they sort of tried to insert some of that, but yeah,
it felt
very
weird.
Truncated.
Yeah, it felt kind of like, well, we have to get this in there because reasons, and so they just kind of like, okay, just say this.
It worked well enough, I guess. They could have turned it into a whole song. We should probably be counting our blessings.
It could have been in the
about the mustard mine.
Oh,
I think I would have liked it if they'd turned her scene into a song. If they'd actually used the dialogue from the book, because I do like the dialogue from the book.
They might be giants to do a song about a mustard mine. You buy that.
They should.
Then we have the weird animal. I'm like, what's with the baby goat? And then when you move on to a chimp, I wrote, a chimp? Ew, what on earth? Like, that was not endearing to me. I'm not trying to, I like animals, but there's no... I don't know. The chimp kind of grossed me out for some reason.
It was a really odd thing, and it feels like I wrote down, what's with the 80s and the random monkey?
It's a leftover from the 60s, because there was chimps all over the 60s.
Oh, it's true. That's true.
And a little bit in the 90s, too.
Did they just want to include animals to make it more appealing to children? Because these things are not in the book.
I don't know.
It did not make sense.
They just had an extra monkey laying around. They're like, well, let's just do this quick.
I wonder if they weren't just trying to make it more eye-catching to children to have more animals stuck in there. That was odd.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a very random inclusion. I think they only did it to tie it back into like what I was talking about at the beginning about her relationship with her mother and wanting to be grown up and join the Tea Party, because it was like talk about the animals' mothers and like she told them to go back to their mother or something. I don't know.
Okay. And then there's the griffin.
Yes, she's off to see the griffin and Mock Turtle after this.
She's not off to see the wizard? Ugh, darn it.
Different movie.
The griffin was Sid Caesar.
I know that name. He was like a famous comedian, wasn't he? Like
Sid Caesar. I'm trying. Yeah, he was.
He probably started out in vaudeville, then radio, then television. I feel like I've seen clips of him.
So he was in a Mad World as Melville Crump. He started in 1941.
Crump could be one of my fake names. And he had his own show, right, in the 50s?
Let me check.
Yeah.
Nothing according to this.
I'm on Wikipedia. It says he had the Sid Caesar show from 63 to 64.
Oh, okay. I was looking in the 50s. Sorry.
Okay, I was thinking it was 50s, so I was wrong on that. But basically one of the early television people.
Oh, he did have one in the 50s, too.
Oh,
Actually, he had two in the 50s.
Okay. So, yeah, he was one of the pioneers.
He was also in Love American Style. Another one.
That was the thing. Like, there was some people, like, I would look them up, and I'd see like the same movies. Like you mentioned, I think it was the Poseidon Adventure. There was a bunch of people from that in this.
There was, I think, 6 of them, because it was Shelley Winters, Ernest Borgnine, Red Buttons, and 2 others, or 3 others that were in that. But then again, Poseidon Adventure was, again, one of those movies where they just had everybody. It was a star-studded affair.
That makes sense then.
Like, it was a good movie on its own, but it was made for celebrities.
Okay.
Now, here's a question. Does anybody think that Ringo Starr was crying soup?
It kind of felt like it.
Because I put gross tears soup ?
I mean, the turtle is supposed to sing a song about turtle soup. Maybe he was. I didn't even think of that. That's gross if that's true.
But his tears looked so gross. It's like, is that supposed to be soup?
Maybe that's the way that turtles cry. Or mock turtles cry.
According to the people who made this film. Yeah. Oi. And I put, he's crying for he has no pants.
Oh, yeah. This was like, I was watching this like, okay, cool.
It's cringy.
Oh my God. It's like, there was tights before this, but these were tights.
And he was so, like, he probably enjoyed this role because you remember he was on another kids show at some point. Was it Shiny Time Station?
Yes, Shining Time Station. That's what I recognize him from.
That I grew up watching.
I knew he was in the Beatles, but Shining Time Station is how I knew him.
So I'm guessing that he was just good with roles like this. I don't have the same pity for him as I did for Donald O'Connor. Like, I think he was okay with dancing around in this costume. I do like his accent, and they obviously were doing a little nod to him by giving a big gold earring.
That was my favorite part of the costume. I was like, that's perfect for him. They obviously modeled it after the actor.
Nice.
But yeah, TMI. One of the best things is his accent, because you had an actual British person. I mean, I think they had more than one. They did.
Sure.
They had more than one actual British person, but. And I don't know how much there is to say about this scene. The song wasn't from the book. It was about...
They didn't actually sing about turtle soup. They just put it in his eyes, apparently.
And they had the blue puffs coming out of their mouths, which was probably supposed to engage children.
I forgot about that.
What was the song about?
I think it was just about nonsense.
Oh, like embracing silliness or something?
Maybe. I don't know.
You can tell how memorable this was. Wow.
I watched it over a week ago, so I've kind of forgotten some key details here.
I finished it on Wednesday. This shows you how memorable this is. If I'm, 3 days later or whatever, 4 days later. I figured there was no point in watching it way ahead of time because I want it to be fresher on my mind, and even now with all of these notes, I'm still not remembering things. After this is the trial for the tarts, and I put weird music for trial, and now I'm trying to remember what was weird about it. Was it like...
Well, the Hatter sang a song.
No, it was just like the music that they paired with the scene was odd.
The jury they had was just a bunch of birds for some reason.
They were all ducks, weren't they?
I think there were some parrots in there, too.
Okay. It was hard to tell from a distance.
Was Donald in there, or had he gone home?
Well, Daffy wanted to get in, but he was, held out the back. They were like,
I mean, Donald O'Connor.
Oh, that
way. They did include, I think they had the cook testify.
Yeah, the cook came back.
They did it a little bit differently, but the court scene is one of those that they do variations on, and as far as it goes, it was okay. But it was also different because obviously they were trying to keep her trapped in this magical land, so instead of having the cards fly up at her and she wakes up, I mean, for some reason they had the cards chase after her, and then it you think that she's returning to reality by having the leaves drifting down, but then she's still trapped on the other side of the mirror instead of stepping through the mirror, which I don't blame them for doing it that way, but I don't really like it.
I kind of liked the idea of it. I think it could have been done a little bit better, but I liked how she ran into the house and she saw Dinah in the mirror, but then she turned around, Dinah's not there, and she realizes that she's not actually in her own room. I thought it was a cool idea.
I like the idea of her dreaming and waking up, and it's kind of that way in Through the Looking Glass too, isn't it? Like the idea of falling asleep in her chair, but then stepping through into another world.
Nice.
And so you don't have the fear factor of it, of like, oh wow, she has to go on this saga of growing up or something in order to finally get back to her mother, and there's this sad, depressive element. Like, no, it's supposed to be a dream world, a really strange dream world, which fits with all of these weird characters.
Well, and I think too that from a production side of things, I'm sure that it was a case of, that they were like, okay, we've got people here for the first night of this. We need to get people back for the second half. So we need to leave it on a cliffhanger. We need to make sure that people are like, what's happening?
Well, okay, this is kind of, I don't know, it doesn't fit with what we're talking about. But I wanted to point out they have a portrait of Queen Victoria on the wall.
I saw that.
Which
I thought
is
that was
very
kind of
fitting because
interesting.
this is written during the era of Queen Victoria, and it doesn't fully feel Victorian, even though they're in kind of period costumes. For some reason, it just doesn't feel very Victorian to me. But that is a good nod to the era of the book. Anyway.
Yeah, it was a kind of an odd. It's like when you go into a house and they're like, oh, well, we have this furniture from, say, the 1950s. But then it's like nothing else matches. Or you can tell it's reproductions as compared to originals. Like it's supposed to replicate it, but it doesn't. Like there's something off about it.
I think what felt off to me was that there were so many Americans in this, it just didn't feel very British. So it was weird that they had Queen Victoria on the wall.
Maybe that threw off the feel.
Not even the cat's meow was British. I mean, my goodness.
Okay, and now we're getting to the climax of this epic tale.
Well, when she ran out of the courtroom and she was running home, I guess I thought that's where it was going to end. Like, I was like, oh, well, that's kind of a weird way to end this. But then it kept going. And she ran to the house. She can't find her parents. She sees them in the mirror. They can't hear her. And then she starts reading the Jabberwocky. I was like, what are they doing? This is so weird. And then the Jabberwocky shows up.
The Majestic. Shout out to Tom McLaughlin. Whoever you are, I wanted to mention Tom McLaughlin because he plays the Jabberwocky. I didn't bother to Google him. Maybe he has the face on the internet. I don't know.
Let's see.
You're going to find out, aren't you?
I was just going to look it up quick because he had me interested. Oh, where is it?
I can spell it out for you.
No, I just was looking through because there was some trivia on it. I was going to pull from that, but we'll go back here and there he is. He looks like a rocker from the 80s.
On Wikipedia, it says he's an American screenwriter, film and television director, and former mime who is most notable for directing Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, and One Dark Night.
Oh, wow. So he liked being potentially scary in his little puffy costume.
I would say so. He was also the writer of She-Wolf of London. Don't know one way or the other. They came from outer space. Yeah, One Dark Night.
So he wasn't really an actor, which I guess is fine because he's inside a big rubber costume.
In this particular, he has 20 acting credits.
Was he in a big rubber costume for all of them?
Oh, 100%. He was in Critters 2. Which, oh boy.
This is a specific type of person here.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. They didn't just get some, like, his heart was probably in this role.
I would actually agree with you on that because it looks like he plays quite a few like creature type roles.
I'm glad I brought this up because this is actually interesting. Like this guy has personality.
Well, he was a former mime, so
like
that helps. He played a character called Igor. He played Irma the robot maid.
I had no idea I was bringing up somebody this interesting.
He played Alfred the janitor in a movie called Rocksteady Row, which maybe that pulls from the kind of rock and roll look, because he does truly look like a rock and roll guy. Like he's got the long hair and kind of the leather jacket and stuff.
I figured I was just bringing up some random guy who got stuck in a costume. I think is kind of where my mind was going. Like, no, this is his life. This is somebody with a lot of personality. Like, I'm wondering what he would be like at a picnic. I mean...
Well, here's the background for it. So the Jabberwocky costume was designed by production designer Philip Jeffries in the early production process. A description from Lewis Carroll provided the costume design. It was fabricated by Adam.
They didn't check that description very well, then.
Body of a dragon, whiskers, fish-like head, insect antennae, and a pair of talon-like hands, on both hands and wings, as well as forelegs when it walked on the ground. Which never really did that. It was always upright. But it was fabricated by Adam Hill and Tom McLaughlin.
I want to bring up something. I have another tangent.
Sure.
You remember the Jabberwocky from that? I don't remember which one. Was it 60s? With the little boy where they were acting it out, and it was like
the horrifying Muppet thing?
Where it like screamed kind of like a Muppet?
It sounded like Miss Piggy being killed.
Oh, goodness.
So this is comparatively probably a good Jabberwocky, but it's also just funny because it reminds me of those like inflatable dinosaur costumes.
That's what I said.
Oh,
I was like, this is what inspired those inflatable dinosaur costumes.
Little do you realize. Little do you realize this is where Tom McLaughlin is really making his money. He's like, we could make an inflatable of this and sell it to I'm making that up, but
nice.
If that turns out to be true, then
that would be really cool. Okay, so he helped fabricate the costume. They couldn't find an actor or a stuntman to fit the height matching his height, so they decided that Tom would be the Jabberwocky, and he performed the role from that point on.
Okay, and so you have the Jabberwocky, apparently played by this very colorful individual, and then, isn't she like screaming in the living room and everything? And then twinkling music and credits like death monster. Like,
If that's not the 80s in a nutshell, I don't know what is.
That's messed up. And so my last note for the Alice episode was okay. ...
That's awesome. Proper response.
Like, you can at least have slightly serious sounding credit music. Like come back next week, kids.
To see if Alice gets eaten in the first 5 minutes, and then that's all that the episode is.
I mean, if they did a Muppet version, she probably would. She'd just be biffing around in soft, plush tummy of the Jabberwocky.
They really need to do a full-length Alice in Wonderland with Muppets. I mean, they did that one episode of the Muppet Show, but they need to, actually do it.
It actually fits with the Muppets.
Yeah.
Come on.
That would be cool.
And have Miss Piggy voice the Jabberwocky.
I mean, why not? We've heard it before.
Thanks for watching Wonderland Wednesday. If you want more Alice in Wonderland content, make sure to check out my other channel, Every Version Ever. In addition to these brand new episodes here, over there I'm releasing extended podcast editions of classic Wonderland Wednesday episodes from 2017 and 2018. Subscribe to both for more Wonderland content all summer long. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Come along and pass through the looking glass into Wonderland.